Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Rosenblum. I'm the Education Program Manager for the National Park Service, and we're happy that you joined us today. Today we have a very special presentation from the National Mall and at the Lincoln Memorial. And the presenter we have today is Jennifer Epstein. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and get our program started. So again, the name of the program today is Civil Rights in the Lincoln Memorial. On the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln's second inaugural address, our presenter today is Jennifer Epstein, Education Specialist at the National Mall. The slides you see here is all of the partners that are involved in the presentation of the Presidential Primary Sources Project. Our content providers are the National Park Service, the National Archives Presidential Library, the 6th Floor Museum at Dilley Plaza, and the Woodrow Wilson House. And then you see Internet 2, Magpie, and the Idaho Education Network, which are our technical partners who help provide the bridging and the connectivity for us to be able to present these programs to you. The disclaimer that you see here is a legal language to inform the schools that the students who are participating in these programs will be live. They may be live streamed, broadcast, videotaped, audio taped, and archived for future access by other schools and the public. And that it's the responsibility of the schools to identify permission for the students to participate in this program, either on camera or by audio. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask each one of the schools in order to check in. And what we're going to ask you to do is, when I call your school's name, unmute the microphone, and we'll have somebody from each school introduce their school, let us know where your school is located, the town and state, what class you're in, and what teacher's name is. So at this time, we're going to start. I know we have students at Birchwood School. Would someone from Birchwood like to introduce your school?
We are from Birchwood, Wisconsin, and we are Birchwood Blue Hills Charter School. And today we are with our advisor, Jenny Landis.
Thank you. Do we have anyone at Ursuline High School that would like to introduce your school? Is there anyone in the room there at Ursuline High School? I know we're connected. Okay. Do we have anyone at Sealy Lake in Montana? Have you called in yet? All right. Well, maybe the Ursuline High School in Sealy Lake will join us after we get started. But at this time, I'm going to ask Jennifer Epstein to go ahead and start her program. And we'll check in with you in a bit. Thank you.
Good morning, Birchwood. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, great. Great. Well, welcome to the Lincoln Memorial. Anybody been here before? Oh, good. Some of you have. Great. Well, we had hoped to do this last Wednesday, which would have been March 4th, the anniversary of the 150th anniversary of the second inaugural address. That was our plan. But we had a really rainy day, and then the next day we got a huge snowstorm, which for DC was huge, but for you would probably make you laugh at us, because our city shut down for like, what, 5 inches of snow? So I'm sure you guys in Wisconsin are used to that. But glad we could reschedule and bring you on a little trip here to the Lincoln Memorial today, for those that may not have been here before. And we are commemorating Lincoln's 150th anniversary, the anniversary of Lincoln's 150th of the second inaugural. So we're all in anniversary mode here. There's a lot going on to commemorate this historic time period. Have you all had a chance to read Lincoln's second inaugural address?
No.
I see some nods. Okay, well, we'll give you a piece of it in a minute here. I'm going to put you to work a little bit. I hope you're prepared. But Lincoln's second inaugural took place, not here, obviously, where I'm standing at the Lincoln Memorial, but about 2 miles down the road from me at the U.S. Capitol. It would have happened on the East Front. And they say on that day it was really rainy and dreary. It's threatening to do that here again today. But back then, it was a really dreary day, and as soon as Lincoln got up to give his speech, apparently the clouds parted and it became a beautiful sunny day. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little dramatic, but at least it stopped raining long enough for Lincoln to give his second inaugural. The shot you're seeing now is of that day, and supposedly in that crowd somewhere is John Wilkes Booth, which leads to a whole nother story about President Lincoln later. I'm sure you're familiar with him, right? This is a shot. I don't know if you can see Lincoln in the middle of that picture somewhere, but he's there giving his speech. And today we think of the president getting sworn in and then giving his speech. Back then it would have been the opposite. He would have given the speech and then been sworn in. And he gave this speech, one of the shorter of the inaugural speeches that was ever given. And it is carved here on our walls at the Lincoln Memorial, just a little bit over my left shoulder. There you see the second inaugural. So I wanted to go ahead and have you look at just a little piece of it. I'm not going to make you read the whole thing right now, but there's a really short phrase at the end that's really pretty well known, pretty popular. You may have even heard some of these words before. Maybe I could get a volunteer who would be willing to help me out and read just a short piece, just a couple lines, maybe it is just one line, of the second inaugural. I'm going to put it up on the screen here in just a second, I hope.
Mike, can you forward the slide?
Thank you. Bertrude, would someone be willing to read that for us, please?
Go for it, Jasmine. Well, how much do I read? All of it. Okay, that would do. All with firmness in the right as I can't say that. As God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Very good, thank you. So, this last part of his speech deals a lot with what Lincoln was trying to do during his presidency. Have you all studied President Lincoln much? Anybody tell me what idea President Lincoln is trying to get across, or what he might be talking about? Do these words make sense to us nowadays?
Like that. Slavery.
Yeah, I was thinking freedom, sorta.
Yeah, speak loud.
Freedom. Sure, that's an idea that was important to Lincoln. With malice towards none, with charity for all, he's talking. What's the big issue that he's dealing with? Certainly slavery and freedom is one, but there's another thing that he's dealing with. What's happening in the country at this time?
The end of the Civil War.
Right. Well, we're coming to the end of the Civil War, right? And his presidency has dealt with this the whole time. And really, more than anything else, what does he want to see happen to his country?
join together.
Exactly right. Reunion. That's going to be the big thing that President Lincoln is looking for above almost anything else. That's it. He wants this country back together, and he wants them to stop fighting each other. And so that's his ultimate goal, and really that's what he's kind of talking about in this speech. He's laying out his plan for what it's going to be like after the war is over. He sees the end in sight, and he's thinking about how we are going to bring the South back and how things are going to continue as a reunited nation. So this has become a pretty famous speech, and has been celebrated and talked about a lot lately here because of this big anniversary. But it's something that hasn't gone away in 150 years. It's been a pretty important speech and recognized as one of Lincoln's best, which is probably why it's right here on our walls. Which brings us to this building and this place. Why here? What's this all about? Why did they decide to build this big memorial to Abraham Lincoln? A lot of it probably has to do with what happened just a few weeks down the road from this inaugural speech. What's going to happen to him in April of 1865?
His assassination.
Yes. You know where that happened?
Forest Theater.
Yeah, that's what you're looking at right now, the building from the outside, and the booth, the spot where he was sitting. Maybe I shouldn't say booth. The box where he was sitting, where he was shot. He was watching the show Our American Cousin. John Wilkes Booth sneaks into the box and shoots him, and he dies across the street the next morning at the Peterson House. These are all spots that are protected and preserved by the National Park Service, so you can come visit us someday and see this memorial and visit Ford's Theater. And even today they do shows at Ford's Theater, so you can see plays, and they carry that on just as Abraham Lincoln liked to have happen. He loved to get away from it all and go see a show, and now you all can do that too. Probably because of his tragic death, there's talk pretty soon after of a memorial to President Lincoln. It doesn't get going right away. The landscape here in D.C. is going to change a lot from what it was during Lincoln's time. Where I'm standing now, back then would have been part of the Potomac River, and right now we're on solid ground. So things have really changed here over the years. But there's going to be a Lincoln Memorial Commission, which gets started in the early 1900s, and there'll be lots of debates. A lot of our memorials here had different debates and things happening around them, controversies and things. But the two guys who are going to make this memorial happen are the guys you see pictured now, Daniel Chester French and Henry Bacon. Bacon's the guy who designs the building, so the structure that you are pretty familiar with probably, with the columns and all the marble. He designs the building, and then he has a friend, Daniel Chester French, who's a sculptor, and he asks him to do the statue of Lincoln, which you may see. Can they see it? So these two guys are going to be the kind of the brains and the builders of this memorial. And when they do design this memorial, they're going to put a lot of symbolism in here about Lincoln's idea of reunion. And you see that from all over the place. What you're looking at now is the kind of the roof of the building. You're seeing the names of different states there. And they put the two rows, in fact, the bottom row you see are the 36 states that were in the country at the time of Lincoln's death. And if you were here and could run around and count all the columns around this building, you'd find that there are 36 to match those 36 states. It was a way of showing the unity of the nation again. When they finished building this memorial in 1922, they included all the states up on the top row, all the states that were in the Union at that time. That was 48. And if you're worried at all about Alaska and Hawaii not being included, they came later, so they get their own spot. They weren't able to put them up on the roof because there wasn't any space for them there. So they get their own plaque down on the plaza. As you're walking up to the memorial, you can find Alaska and Hawaii, because I'm sure you were worried about them not being represented there. We've got our columns, as I mentioned, and we have a lot of different kind of rock that was used in building this memorial. I'm standing right now on some very cold Tennessee marble, looking at the columns here that were made of, I think, Indiana limestone inside, and we've got some Colorado marble on the steps. We've got all different kinds of marble and all different kinds of rock. The Statue of Lincoln, Georgia marble. Anybody have any thoughts as to why maybe they would use all these different kinds of rock from all these different places?
To include all the states. To include all
You say it
the
again,
states.
please?
To include all of the states in it.
Exactly right. They wanted to kind of, again, hit on that theme of reunion, like literally with the building blocks of this memorial from all the states, north and south. Georgia, Tennessee, Colorado, Indiana. We got all our states, or many states represented here. It was another way of showing reunion when it came to this building. So we have the rock, we have the columns, we have the state names. We even have this inscription, which I'm not sure if you can see or not behind me, but the inscription above the statue says, in this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union, again referencing saving the Union, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. And for any school group that has to suffer through a tour with me here at the Lincoln Memorial, I almost always ask them to find another symbol of the Union that most people don't recognize when they come here and aren't really looking for. But a symbol of the Union that you probably look at every morning in school, what might that be?
The Pledge of Allegiance, the flag.
Yeah, what do you say it to?
The flag.
Exactly, the American flag. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty hard to tell, and you really need to kind of look around when you're here. But the cloth draped behind the Lincoln statue was meant to be an American flag. If you can get close up to it, you can kind of see some stars and some stripes. A way of seeing that the American flag is represented here. Not a lot of people know that, so next time you're here, you'll have to check that out. But again, another symbol of the Union. So clearly, when this building is built, it's all about reunion and unity. When I first asked you, though, about Lincoln and what his goals were, what was the subject you brought up first? When we think about Lincoln, we think of him as being famous for a couple of things.
I brought freedom up. Freedom.
Say it again, please.
Freedom.
Exactly, slavery and the idea of emancipation. And we do have that idea represented here. But the predominant theme here is certainly reunion. I was just asked this morning while I was standing here about these two murals, which I've got on the screen for you here. These are above the speeches that are carved into the walls here. We have the Gettysburg Address on one side. And above that, the mural known as Emancipation, where you see the angel of truth in the center, letting the slaves go free. Across the way here in the chamber is the other mural over the second inaugural address, and this one's called Reunion, and you can see the angel of truth in the center, joining North and South symbolically back together again. So, while the main, a lot of our symbolism here is about reunion, we do have some references to the idea of emancipation. So, construction here at the Lincoln took place between 1914 and 1922. I brought along a few photos from the construction process. I'm betting you can't really see it, but if you're able to see, there's a, oh, can I go back one, please? there's a shot, if you look to the left, you may be able to see in the distance the Washington Monument, which was built before the Lincoln Memorial. It's off on the side, kind of on the left side of the picture. But if you've ever wondered why you had to climb up so many steps at the Lincoln Memorial, this photo shows why. There's a really deep foundation here. As I mentioned, this was once kind of marshy area. This was reclaimed land that came from the Potomac, so the foundation's really deep, and that's why you're walking up all those steps when you get here. The next shot I have is construction of the statue. Most people think it's just one piece of marble, but it's really 28 separate pieces of marble all put together. And when we see this next photo, you might be able to notice that there's one thing in particular that's missing from this statue. Can I get the next shot one, please? What do you notice is missing?
His head.
His head is gone as well.
He's not even there.
So the dedication for this memorial took place on May 30th, 1922. Yeah. It's a great shot, isn't it?
It appears that we may have lost our connection. Mike, do we still have Jennifer out at the memorial?
No, Linda, it looks like they dropped off.
Okay. Do we still have Birchwood? Are there any other schools on the lines besides Birchwood?
This is where you need in. Sealy, can you hear us? Sealy Lake?
There we go. Hi, Seeley.
Hi.
We can see you. Thank you for joining us. Were you able to see the presentation from the Lincoln Memorial as well, Seeley? We didn't know what time you guys came in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we have anyone at Ursuline High School yet? There we go. Jennifer, we're back. Okay. Go.
Oh, great. Sorry, I missed you. Okay. So you can tell it's a busy day here at the Lincoln. There's always stuff going on here. We're talking about the dedication ceremony, which had Warren Harding as president and Chief Justice William Howard Taft, and Lincoln's only surviving son at that point, Robert Todd Lincoln, was in attendance. And I don't know if this is 100% proven or not, but pretty neat story, the fact that I remember hearing that Robert Todd, during the construction, liked to come by a lot and see the memorial getting built as it was happening. So Taft is on the left, Warren Harding is in the center, and Robert Lincoln is on the right, just if you weren't sure who those people were.
Hey, Jennifer,
also invited to...
before you go on,
Yeah.
we do have Seeley Lake on the line as well, so you can invite them to answer questions as well.
Great, thank you. So, invited to speak at the dedication beyond these three fellows was Dr. Robert Moton. He was the president of Tuskegee Institute, and he's an African American invited to speak. And we have a little footage that's kind of interesting of the Lincoln Memorial dedication. There's Dr. Moton getting ready to speak, and hopefully we can show you just this little snippet. This is kind of interesting. So bear with me here.
22, 57 years after President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at the end of the Civil War. More than 50,000 people crowded the grounds for the dedication ceremonies, including elected officials and the diplomatic corps. Among the dignitaries were U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice and former President William Howard Taft, President Warren G. Harding, and Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's only surviving son. President Harding, in a speech broadcast on nationwide radio, told the audience, "This memorial is less for Abraham Lincoln than those of us today, and for those who follow after."
So even in the presentation of this video clip, isn't this interesting that they didn't mention Dr. Moton, who they just showed speaking. They didn't even mention he was there. And when President Harding, who's up there now, gave his speech, he started by saying, "It is a supreme satisfaction officially to accept on behalf of the government this superb monument to the savior of the Republic." So again, this idea of reunion, they're all, shaking hands there and having a good time. Not so much the idea of freedom. And in fact, Dr. Moten tried to incorporate that into his speech and was told maybe he should take it back a notch because if you consider the time period where 1922, Washington, D.C., we're right on the border with Virginia. It's almost like being in a southern city here. Dr. Moten wanted to talk about current conditions in his speech and how people weren't treated equally. And his speech was deemed too outspoken on the subject, and he was asked to change it. So he couldn't say all that he wanted to say. And on top of that, the audience that he was speaking to was segregated. I'm sure you pretty much know what that means. It meant that there were African Americans at this event who had their own section to sit in at the dedication for the Lincoln Memorial. It's pretty unbelievable when we consider this place today to be a spot where we think about freedom for all, and yet the very first folks to come here on the day it opens aren't even allowed to sit where they want to. So, how does this all change? How does this become the place where now we consider it a symbol of freedom from a place that was really built all about the reunion of the country? Well, one step towards changing this would happen in 1939, just 17 years after the dedication of this memorial. Does anybody recognize this lady in the picture? Sealy Lake, are you with us? Anybody know who that is?
Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks.
I hear some guesses. Not Rosa Parks.
Marian Anderson.
Marian Anderson, yes, that's who that is. Marian Anderson was a famous opera singer, and she traveled all over the world. In the 1930s, she was traveling all over Europe performing. And by 1939, we're getting close to World War II, and she's going to want to kind of get away from Europe where war is brewing, and she's going to come back to the States and perform in a number of locations. And she's going to want to come to Washington, D.C., where she is well known, obviously, all over the place. And they were looking for the best place for her to perform. They wanted a big hall where they could host her and have her perform for lots of people. The best place for that is Constitution Hall. It's just down the street from where I'm standing now. I'm at 23rd. It's right down the street at 17th Street. And Constitution Hall, run by the Daughters of the American Revolution, had a policy that said African American performers couldn't perform there. And so she was denied the chance to sing there. And one of the prominent members of the Daughters of the American Revolution was the First Lady at the time, Eleanor Roosevelt. And when Eleanor Roosevelt heard about this, she had invited Marian Anderson to perform at the White House before, and so she was a little upset by this and decided to even quit her membership with the Daughters of the American Revolution. She wrote this great letter where she said, she told the president of the Daughters of the American Revolution that you had an opportunity to lead in an enlightened way, and it seems to me that your organization has failed. So it's kind of neat to see her typewritten letter as she wrote it in resigning from the DAR. So, since she couldn't perform at Constitution Hall, what do you think happened? Where's my other group? Who's my first group? Yeah, guys, go ahead. Birchwood.
She performed outside at the Lincoln Memorial. Okay.
Very good, yes. It was arranged through the Secretary of the Interior at the time, which the National Park Service that I work for falls under the Department of Interior. His name was Harold Ickes, which I just like to say, because Harold Ickes is a fun name. He arranged it with the help of Eleanor Roosevelt to offer up the Lincoln Memorial steps for Marian Anderson to perform, and she would perform, as you see in the picture, to a crowd of 75,000 people on April 9th, 1939. And people could sit wherever they wanted. It was a non-segregated audience. It was everybody could be there. It was a great opportunity for people to come out and hear this woman sing. And what's so great, oh, and I have a piece of it. I forgot. I almost missed it. Let me let's look at this really quick, or listen, if as the case may be.
Nation's most impressive Easter demonstration. 75,000 massed before Lincoln Memorial to hear Marian Anderson, colored contralto, make her capital debut at the great Emancipator Shrine. Refusal of the DAR to let her use their hall fanned a countrywide controversy, with this great gathering as the climax. The singer was invited by Secretary of the Interior, Ickes, who attends with Secretary of the Treasury, Morgenthau. Spectators include Supreme Court Justice Black, New York Senator Robert Wagner, and a host of notables, here to listen to the voice acclaimed by many as the finest in a century.
Okay, so I'm going to keep that song in your head just for a minute, because that's going to may come back to be a part of our story here. So I love this Marian Anderson story. We celebrated the 75th anniversary of this concert last year here, and it's just a fabulous story because so many people maybe nowadays come and or set out to kind of change the world and make big statements. And what Marian Anderson was trying to do was sing. That was what she liked to do. And she wasn't trying to make a huge statement about the policy at Constitution Hall. She was just looking for a place to perform. And when she got here to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, she said she saw this crowd. She wrote an autobiography about it, about her life. And she said she stood here on these steps and she almost couldn't speak. She was so overwhelmed by the reception that she got, and she was afraid that no sound would come out of her mouth. And you just heard her. She sounded pretty amazing. But it's just a great story of her coming here just to sing and to pursue what she liked. And in doing so, she made a huge statement. So, you know a little bit about Marian Anderson now. I'm going to share with you a little piece of an essay. I hope you can bear with me. It's maybe a tiny bit long here. Oh, and it's up on the screen. I'm going to read it, I think, anyway, just to get through it here. This is written in 1944, so the concert was in 1939, so a few years later. And it's written by a high school student. So this is a high school project that a student wrote in 1944. And he is describing what's going on, and he's going to cite Marian Anderson's story as an example. So he says, "Black America still wears chains. Finest Negro is at the mercy of the meanest white man. Even winners of our highest honors face the class color bar. Look at a few of the paradoxes that mark daily life in America. Marian Anderson was barred from singing in the Constitution Hall, ironically enough, by the professional daughters of the very men who founded this nation for liberty and equality. But this tale had a different ending. The nation rose in protest and gave a stunning rebuke to the daughters of the American Revolution, and a tremendous ovation to the artist, Marian Anderson, who sang in Washington on Easter Sunday and fittingly before the Lincoln Memorial. Ranking cabinet members and a justice of the Supreme Court were seated about her. 75,000 people stood patiently for hours to hear a great artist at a historic moment. She sang as never before with tears in her eyes. When the words of America and nobody knows the trouble I seen rang out over that great gathering, there is a hush on the sea of uplifted faces, black and white, and a new baptism of liberty, equality, and fraternity. That was a touching tribute, but Miss Anderson may not as yet spend the night in any good hotel in America. Recently, she was again signally honored by being given the Bach Award as the most distinguished resident of Philadelphia. Yet she cannot be served in many of the public restaurants of her home city, even after it has declared her to be its best citizen. The same was true here in Washington, D.C. After she performed here that concert on Easter Sunday, she had to stay with friends because she wasn't allowed to stay at a motel here in Washington at that time. So the writer of this essay ran into a similar situation. He had won a contest. He had written the best essay in his class, and he went to represent his school at an essay competition where they, might have been oratory, where they spoke and maybe read this. And he was from the South, and so he goes to present this essay, and on his way home, he is sitting on the bus with his teacher when he's forced to move to the back. And he has to get up, he's very angry, has to go to the back of the bus and stand for the remainder of the trip. So that, the student who wrote this essay has a similar situation, can relate to what Marian Anderson had gone through. So, anybody have any who wrote that essay? Sealy Lake, you want to take a guess?
Give it a shot. Martin Luther King Jr.
Very good guess. It was Martin Luther King. It's hard to think of him as a 15-year-old boy writing an essay in high school. But yes, indeed, this is an essay he wrote where he cites this Marian Anderson concert and talks about it and how the rights of all people aren't equal. Dr. King is going to come here to this very same spot and stand on the very same steps where Marian Anderson sang in 1963 as part of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was August 28th. Apparently it was very hot, which I think I could go for right now. He was one of many speakers that day, and he was the last one who spoke, and his last speech is remembered pretty much for the phrase that he said over and over again. Birchwood, what was the name of the speech?
I had a dream. I have a dream.
Indeed. I have a dream. Thank you. Yes, he talked about his dream and what he hoped would what he hoped for the country, and in particular his own family. So I have two pieces of Dr. King's speech here that I was wanting to share, just really briefly. It's pretty cool. We do a program here each year where we have students recite the I Have a Dream speech standing on the steps at the Lincoln Memorial, and that's pretty impressive. To hear those words from this place, it's a real connection. So, who was that? So, Birchwood, you want to do the first part here, if you wouldn't mind? Sorry to make you work so hard. Share with us the spirit.
Okay, I have a dream that my that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Great, thank you. Sealy Lake, would you do the next piece?
I can't read it.
So just turn it on. Yeah, and Avery, if you want somebody stand up. We can't see the very top of it, but we can see where it starts with children.
Okay, this will be the day when all of God's children
I can't read it.
Children will be able to sing with their new meaning. My country, 'tis thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing, land where my father died. Land of pilgrims' pride. From every mountainside let freedom ring. And if Americans If America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
Very nice, thank you. So, do any of those words sound familiar? Who's that? Birchwood, I'll go back to you.
Though my country 'tis of thee, all the way. Oh, it's the lyrics to America the Beautiful. I think. America.
Yeah?
That Marian Anderson sang.
Right. There you go. Yes, right. It's the song that Marian Anderson sang, and Dr. King ends up quoting it in his speech that he gave in the very same spot. So we can't help but think that this is all connected when you consider that Dr. King is 15 years old, is writing about Marian Anderson's concert, and then he comes here to the very steps where she sang, and he gives this memorable speech, and then at the end gets, I don't know if you've heard this story, but Dr. King apparently started with a script, and he said he kind of started with this whole conversation about, he called it a promissory note, and how that, you know, there was a blank check that Americans hadn't cashed in for the sake of African Americans and equality, and he went off script as the speech goes on, and he started talking about his dream. And so at the end, there he is quoting "My Country 'Tis of Thee," this very song that Marian Anderson sang here. So it's kind of neat to see these connections all happen around this place, the Lincoln Memorial. And when I started at the very beginning, I don't know when Seeley Lake got here, but we talked about a different theme about this memorial. When it first opened, what was the theme all about?
Reunion.
Reunion?
Reunion.
Right, so at the beginning, it's all about reunion. And over time, with the different events that have happened here, things have changed, and now it's become a place that represents freedom, a place where people come to express their First Amendment rights, where people sing on behalf of all people. There's some, it's really changed over time, the way this building has been interpreted. And so, kind of a cool story to be able to tell here about the things that have changed over time. So I will leave you with your own thoughts now to think about what the Lincoln Memorial means to you. And if you haven't been here, I hope you'll get a chance to come see us soon. Pick a warmer day, maybe. It's a little chilly and damp today. But I think I have some time for some questions, so I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, Seeley Lake, would someone like to ask Jennifer a question?
Why did Martin Luther King Jr. have to stand at the back of the bus?
Oh, because that was the rules of, in the South, the rules were different. He and his teacher apparently were sitting in the front of the bus, and if a white person got on, then they would be asked to move. African Americans would be asked to move and stand in the back because the rules of segregation in the South, which is what drove Dr. King to fight so hard for that and making those changes all over the country, but particularly in the South, the rules were much different, and yeah, it was a very different time, and it's hard to imagine and make sense of it today, but those were the rules back then.
Okay, Seeley Lake, another question for Jennifer?
Why couldn't he sit down at the back of the bus? Why do you have to stand?
There's no seats.
I don't know. Maybe there weren't seats. I don't know. just the story that I read of his coming back from this competition or this essay contest, it said that he had to stand. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Okay, Birchwood, does anyone have a question for our presenter today?
How many acres does the whole memorial take over?
You know what? I have no idea. I'm going to have to get back to you on that because acre-wise, I don't have any idea. Our park encompasses quite a bit, but our park stretches from this end at the Lincoln all the way down to just in front of the Capitol. You know what? I don't even know how many acres in our whole park. So I will find that out for you and send you a note back because I'm just not sure. I don't even want to try and make up a number.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from Birchwood have a question?
Are you just a ranger at the memorial?
No. Well, so the rangers here that work on the National Mall get the luxury of rotating around to different sites. So we get to, we come in every morning and we find out where we're going that day to go to different sites. So one day you might be working at the Lincoln, but then the next day you might be working at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the wall, or you might be working up at the Washington Monument. You might be at Martin Luther King's Memorial. We have 8 different sites that we rotate between, so that's what Rangers get to do here. There's a lot of variety. We get to talk about almost every era of American history, from George Washington and Thomas Jefferson right through Korea and Vietnam. My job specifically, though, is dealing with education, so I get to go out to schools a lot and do programs with schools and help out with field trips and things like that. So I'm really lucky. Tomorrow I get to go visit with some 3rd graders, and you know, every day brings something different, so it's really fun. It's a great place to be. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't think so.
Approximately how many people do you get at the Lincoln Memorial a day?
Oh, a day?
Yeah.
So of the memorials, the Lincoln is the most visited. The numbers that we take when we count, and there's some kind of way to figure it all out. The Lincoln Memorial comes out to be the highest visited, most highly visited of our memorials. Off the top of my head, you're playing Stump the Ranger today, aren't you? You're doing a fine job of it too. A daily count, I couldn't tell you. Certainly a day in May. I've been up here before where you can't move because there's just so many people up here, versus a day like today where there's a lot of people at one time and then maybe not so many. The whole park, with all the memorials that I listed before, we say 25 million a year. So I will look, when I'm figuring out the acres, I will look and see what the daily average is for the Lincoln. I don't know that I could really give you a specific number, but Lincoln is definitely the highest visitation of any of our sites annually. Everybody wants to come here.
Does Sealy Lake have one more question before we go?
Where's your favorite place to work and why?
Anybody there ever seen the Franklin Roosevelt Memorial? FDR has a beautiful memorial here on the mall. I think that might be my favorite. It's spread out. I know the acres on that one, 7.5. And it's spread out. It's got waterfalls, and it's got really neat statues, and it's got a lot of fun stuff going on. It tells the whole kind of the whole spread of Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, and he was president for 12 years, so there's a lot to tell. And it's just got really neat landscape and tells a great story, and I think that's probably, I'm not really supposed to have favorites, but I think that's probably my favorite. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, students from Birchwood and Seeley Lake. Our next program will actually be tomorrow, and we hope that you'll be able to join us again. The Internet 2 address that you can see there on your screen is where you can register and find out more about our Presidential Primary Sources Project. And we thank you for joining us live from the Lincoln Memorial.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you.
Thank you.